so you can buy off the most extreme elements of your conference. And a nearly 10-hour vote is just the tip of the iceberg this week. Committee meetings noticed before you even know what you're meeting about, then postponed because your leadership is in some back room making God knows what secret deals. And another failed rule. How many times have we held Rules Committee hearings only to watch it all crash and burn on the House floor? Six failed rules under Speaker Mike Johnson alone, and 9 since Republicans took the majority. You know how many rules failed when I was chair of this committee? 0. You know how many rules failed under Speaker Nancy Pelosi? Also 0. I mean, this is aggravating to me because you are wasting our time. You guys are getting your whip counts from live floor votes. That's embarrassing. And it's disrespectful to us, to the process, and most of all to the people we represent. There are real crises demanding our attention, and you're wasting time playing petty games and arguing amongst yourselves. Honestly, if you were in the minority and watching this unfold, what would you say? How would you defend this unserious process? And I think we all know the answer. You would say it's embarrassing, and you would call us incompetent. And while we talk about your recisions package, please spare us the lectures about cutting spending when this majority just added $4 trillion to the debt so you could give bigger tax breaks to billionaires. The big ugly bill you passed cost 450 times what is being saved with these recisions. You passed your tax breaks for billionaires, and now you're pretending to pay for them. That's all this is. This bill slashes funding for public broadcasting. It guts global health programs. It undermines foreign aid, including to Ukraine. Actually, none of you even know what's fully in this. You know, we've seen the top lines, but even Republican senators are warning we won't understand the consequences until the damage is done. Make no mistake, Madam Chair, democracy is messy, but this is not the give and take of messy democracy. This is a dumpster fire. This is a tug of war between Republican incompetence and Republican extremism. And sadly, no matter which side wins, the American people lose. And finally, earlier this week, Madam Chair, I gave everyone on this committee a chance to go on record about releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein. It was an up or down, yay or nay vote on a very simple amendment that says the Department of Justice must preserve and release all the files. That's it. And shockingly, all but one of you voted against releasing those files. The Speaker put out a statement, and I gotta love this. He put out a statement calling it an obscure stunt. I didn't realize offering amendments was obscure. I'm pretty sure we do that all the time. And when it comes to a stunt, nothing in my amendment would have prevented your crypto bills from moving forward. My amendment simply said that in addition to the crypto bills, we're also going to have a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And if it was such a stunt, why did Mr. Norman, one of the most conservative members of this committee, vote with us? I commend him for doing what was right, especially as President Trump has suddenly decided that this whole thing is a hoax, that the files don't exist, and that the people who believe this stuff are, quote, weaklings. But I frankly don't get why the rest of you voted no. Why would anyone vote against releasing files that we've been told, by the way, by the President, by your Attorney General, by your Director of the FBI, by his Deputy Director? We have been told by them that these files show the identities of those who knew that Jeffrey Epstein was sexually abusing children. So I hope all of you had a chance to consult your constituents and your conscience, and I hope that you will vote with us when I again offer a simple amendment to release the files. Because either one of two things is true. Either one of two things is true. Either there's nothing here, and Trump made all this up and conned you guys into believing it. In that case, you know, why would you vote against releasing files that don't exist? Or there are files, and you guys want to keep them hidden because you're afraid what's in them. Which is it? Which is it? And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Scott,
I would just like to say I look forward to an honest, not a political debate on the issue of the Epstein files. But when you look at the definition of all the files would include a list of the victims of the Epstein crimes.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to the debate. Now you had your time. You put legislation in.
You can't censor me, Mr.
You
Scott.
put
can't censor me.
legislation in at 3:56 when the Rules Committee meets at 4, and we were already in this room when you signed it and put it in. It was a political stunt. That's all it was, and we're going to give you a solution to it.
And if you read the amendment, Mr. Scott, you would realize that there are exceptions to protect the victims of these crimes. And by the way, our language has been out.
No, there are not.
Let-
There are not.
In the Massey counter bill, there are.
That is not what you offered. That is not what you offered. You said all the files, and we have a responsibility to protect the victims.
Mr.
And we
Scott.
know where you are.
Yeah, we know where you are, Mr.
You're
Heidi.
the party of child victims. That's why you opened the border.
True.
That's why you opened the border. How many
Heidi,
children got raped coming across that border because of what the Democratic Party did?
Who voted to cover up the facts.
Okay. We have a hearing here, and we're going to follow our regular order. Thank you very much. If you, it would be better, Mr. Norman, if we just moved on and we came to you during the questioning. Would you indulge me? Would you indulge me? Thank you, Mr. Norman. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Without objection, any prepared statements our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our only panel, Representative Diaz-Balart and Ranking Member DeLauro from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record, and we ask that you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Representative Diaz-Balart, I welcome your testimony.
Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, it's also a privilege to be with the ranking member of the Full Appropriation Committee, who I have the greatest respect for. I know you all have had long days and nights. That's what the Rules Committee does. I will try to be very, very brief, Madam Chairwoman. Again, thank you for this opportunity. I appear before you today to testify on the Senate Amendment H.R. 4, which is the Rescission Act of 2025. The rescission package, Madam Chairwoman, before us today is a really important step towards greater fiscal responsibility and accountability, and prudently realigns, starts a process of prudently realigning our national security priorities. The Senate amendment to H.R. 4 would rescind $9 billion, precisely as you mentioned, Madam Chairwoman, including funding for the United Nations, climate change programs, economic and development assistance, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. In addition, distinguished members, the proposal protects, I want to repeat that, the proposal protects existing vital programs, while also, as I mentioned at the beginning, refocusing programs really to their core functions, their designated core functions, including things like life-saving work, protection of American national security, the advancement of American values, and prioritization and the return on investment to the American taxpayer. There's no question, as you all know, that the federal government spends way too much. And this is, again, one more effort to rein in spending, but doing so, Madam Chairwoman, responsibly, thoughtfully. I look forward to any questions in the conversation. And again, I know you've all had, as the Rules Committee always does, long, long days and nights. So with that, I look forward to the questions, and I will yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Balart. Ranking Member DeLauro, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Foxx and Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. And it is really a pleasure for me to be on this panel with my appropriation colleague, Mr. Diaz-Balart. In addition to being a colleague, he's a friend. And we've worked together on many, many issues over the years. As in June, I remain strongly opposed to this rescission bill, which is a rubber stamp on the Trump administration's stealing from the American people. Since taking office, the Trump administration has stolen funds appropriated by Congress, passed by Republicans and Democrats in the House and in the Senate, and signed into law by the president, the law of the land. Appropriations bills are not a suggestion, they're the laws of the land. And this upends the separation of powers and our constitutional order. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, the architect of the administration's efforts to subvert our power of the purse, has made it clear that he wants to end our appropriations process as we know it. According to Politico, and this was an article today, and this is a quote, Vought said he's looking to change the paradigm of the way appropriations has worked, end quote. The article continues, and I quote again, when specifically asked if he would reassure Democratic appropriators that the White House would abide by bipartisan spending agreements or commit to not using recisions on future appropriations bills, he simply said he would not, end quote. We are on a dangerous and destructive path to degrade and usurp the authority and the prerogatives of the Congress and the Appropriations Committee. I'm afraid we are moving closer and closer to a paradigm, Mr. Vought's paradigm, where the bipartisan appropriations process is completely irrelevant. I underscore bipartisan. This is the only piece of legislation. The appropriations bills are the only pieces of legislation where you must have Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate agree before it can go to the president for a signature. If that conclusion cannot occur, the government shuts down. So he wants to make the process irrelevant, where continuing resolutions, reconciliation, and rescissions are where governing happens. The Appropriations Committee is one of the last places in Congress where bipartisan happens on the Appropriations Committee, and which we're proud of it. This bill will shut down rural television and radio stations, cutting off coverage of local news, eliminating emergency information like severe weather alerts, jeopardizing access to PBS Kids children's programming, Sesame Street, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. The bill rips life-saving support away from hungry, displaced, and sick people in developing countries and conflict zones, and to end programs that prevent conflict and pandemics. The bill abandons the people of Ukraine while they resist Putin's tyranny. The bill puts America last. When we retreat from the world, diplomatically and through our assistance to vulnerable people, America will be alone, without allies, in a less stable world, without the support of the international community. And do you know who will come out ahead? China, Russia, Iran. Just yesterday in the Washington Post, retired Navy Admiral William McRaven, Navy SEAL, four-star admiral, warned that cutting the State Department and USAID will put every American at risk. By the way, he's the admiral who led the effort to capture Saddam Hussein. He said, and this is his quote, and this is, I've got his article right here from the Post. I just have people read it. He says, this is no time to weaken any element of America's power. The dismissal of highly trained diplomats at the State Department and the dismantling of USAID will jeopardize national security and make the military's job more difficult. Our nation's security has never depended on military strength alone. Rather, it relies on collaboration with a strong foreign service and diplomatic corps, end quote. This bill inexplicably carves out the Countering PRC Influence Fund, which while also cutting $500 million in disaster assistance. When people in need see supplies coming through and say, quote, USA, that shows the power of the United States. That will be traded for food aid from China. This is already happening. When Burma experienced a devastating earthquake earlier this spring, instead of the U.S. being first on the scene, China surged to help. The aid that went to people in need was marked as China aid instead of, quote, from the American people, end quote. All of this is being done in the name of combating waste. I will tell you what is waste. 500 tons of food grown by American farmers, destroyed at a cost of $130,000 to American taxpayers because the chaos caused by the dismantling of USAID left it to expire. The same thing is happening to family planning and HIV prevention supplies. This is a bill to help Republicans claim they are practicing fiscal responsibility while concealing that what they are doing is ripping away health insurance from at least 17 million Americans in order to make billionaires more rich, increases our debt by almost $4 trillion. It codifies the right of the Trump administration to steal from rural and vulnerable American communities, children, and the global poor for the sake of handing more money to billionaires. Congress needs to reassert its role and its fight for the middle class, for the working class, and the vulnerable, not protect the interests of billionaires and big corporations. Strongly oppose this bill, which forfeits our global leadership, undermines our national security, and steals from the American people. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. DeLauro. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I won't belabor the point. I appreciate that we are taking up the rescissions bill. I think it's important that we move it forward. We are talking about saving money, and I recognize that there'll be a different opinion on the other side, but this is necessary when we look forward and we are in the kind of debt we are in. We need to do this, and so I appreciate you bringing the bill forward, and I am happy to support it, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Fishbach. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, before I get to my questions, let me just say one other thing on the Epstein issue. Mr. Scott raised a point that he didn't get our amendment in advance. We'll provide you the amendments we're going to offer today in advance, so that, and including how it is specifically stated that there will be protections for the victims. And I think we would appreciate if you would share with us what, in fact, you're going to do, so that we have a chance to be able to digest it. Maybe, in fact, we might agree. I don't think we'd agree if it's non-binding, because then it's just a glorified press release. But I think we will make the text of our amendments available, so you can go through them, during this hearing, and any questions you have, you could then ask them. But we would appreciate you doing the same to us. And with that, let me just say, the Republican chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins, she said the following in opposition to this rescissions package, and I quote, she said, "The rescissions package has a big problem. Nobody really knows what program reductions are in it. That isn't because we haven't had the time to review the bill. Instead, the problem is that OMB has never provided the details that would normally be part of this process. For example, there are $2.5 billion in cuts to the Development Assistance Account, which covers everything from basic education to water and sanitation to food security. But we don't know how those programs will be affected," end quote. Again, these aren't my words. These are the words of the Republican chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So, Mr. Diaz-Balart, I'm puzzled by this. Do you somehow have more information than the entire Republican leadership in the Senate? I mean, do you know what specific programs will be cut in this rescissions package? Or are you comfortable voting to cut billions of dollars in foreign aid, without knowing the specifics?
If I may, Madam Chairwoman, thank you, and thank you for the question. So obviously, I have the highest respect and admiration for the Honorable Chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Let me tell you my circumstances. I actually had multiple meetings with OMB, including the head of OMB, where we discuss these issues at length. As a matter of fact, I actually was able to give him different proposals and different alternatives, and he took a number of those alternatives. Did he take 100% of those alternatives? No. because, you know, the people are free to do what they want. But I will tell you, do I have a pretty good idea as to what this bill does? Of course I do. And remember, it's very similar to what the House already passed, and which was, you know, widely discussed. Now, let's also put another thing put in perspective. As the Honorable Chairwoman mentioned, and I did too in my short opening statement, we're talking about $9 billion. While $9 billion is a substantial chunk of change, there's a heck of a lot of money left over. And to reassure you, this week, we passed the subcommittee legislation that funds all of these issues, foreign aid, foreign policy, et cetera, out of subcommittee. We're already in that process. I wish I could tell you that I specifically know when we'll go to full committee, but I expect to do that soon. So that process has already started, and that process is ongoing, and it's a deliberative process. I think you can expect, Mr. McGovern, as I've done already, and we're going to continue to do, we're going to look through with a very sharp pencil, putting that bill together. This rescission package is $9 billion. And there are a lot of different areas, and if you want to speak about some specific areas, we can.
Like, for example, I mean, I asked the question that Chairwoman Collins asked. There are $2.5 billion in cuts to the Development Assistance Account, which covers everything from basic education to water sanitation to food security. But we don't know how these programs will be affected. So is that $2.5 billion coming out of basic education? Is it coming out of water and sanitation? Is it coming out of food security? I mean, I'm just looking for the, where's it coming from? I mean, the bill also includes $500 million in cuts to global health programs. What specific programs are being cut under what global health program? Yeah, go ahead.
And I think it's a valid question. So in fiscal year 25, the Development Assistance Program was $3.9 billion. The rescission package proposes to pull back $2.5 billion, as you just mentioned. So I don't think it's a secret that the Biden administration, unfortunately, didn't spare this area either in promoting, frankly, wasteful, radical, controversial items in this area as well. So I would tell you that the Trump administration wisely, in my opinion, paused everything and undertook a careful review, something that I think was merited. And so, Mr. McGovern, this actually caused a pipeline of funding to build up. This account was often used to support climate change programs under the guise of development programs, which is something that the American people, I think, don't support. So prior year balances can be used to support development programs that are in the national interest. And so, again, I would argue that there is adequate funding to do what we need to do once we stop doing the things that were wasteful, that were controversial, and that actually, in many cases, hurt our national security interests.
Is there a list somewhere? Because, I mean, nothing in your rescissions bill says anything about, the specifics. I mean, if you really wanted to cut those programs, wouldn't you specifically say that in your bill, that I want to cut, this line item and this particular program? I will tell you, I will agree with my colleagues here that there were some Biden-era programs that were not the most efficient use of federal dollars, and we should go back and we should maybe reevaluate them. And I'd be happy to work with my Republican colleagues on those items, but that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, this rescissions bill would pull back unobligated funds that have not yet been spent on any specific contract or program. And Trump is now president, not Biden. I don't think you're accusing, or maybe you are accusing the Trump administration of funding woke and wasteful programs. But here's the fundamental truth. Because Republicans have issues with a few extremely small grants, they want to rip away global health programs and cut funding for public radio stations that tell Americans when there has been an earthquake, like the 7.3 magnitude quake that just hit Alaska. And for all of our districts that have been hit by devastating natural disasters or are currently going through one, let's not miss the forest, for the trees. I mean, Ranking Member DeLauro, let me ask you the same question. Do you know what specific programs are going to be cut here in this rescissions package? Because I sure as hell don't know.
Yeah,
And
well-
I haven't been given a list.
Yeah, no, I think you put your finger on what the issue is. And look, I have the greatest respect. I worked very, very closely with Senator Collins, Senator Murray, as well as with Chairman Cole. But I think Senator Collins, question is appropriate. We don't know how those programs will be affected. So on the development assistance side, this is really, the Office of Management and Budget really has failed in a spectacular fashion to complete the most basic function. It cannot justify this rescissions proposal. No concrete details to inform either chamber, House or Senate, about what they would choose to cut with the broad authority to devastate investments that are in this bill. They're not telling us what they will cut, because they're going to cut what they want, when they want, and they do not think that you or me or Ranking Member Diaz-Balart or Chairwoman Foxx or anybody in the House and Senate are the people that we represent deserve to know what is going on. It's my understanding, and I saw too in the dialogue about this, is Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota said that even though he initially opposed the bill, he would support it because he got assurances from the Trump administration they would, quote, find Green New Deal money that could be reallocated, but not a shredded detail. Now, when I talk about the public broadcasting side, I can talk about specifics because they cut all of the federal funds, all of the federal funds. By statute, 70% of federal funds for public media are awarded directly to locally owned public television stations and public radio stations. So in other words, approximately $750 million of the funds being rescinded will come from eliminating small grants to local stations. And rescinding the funds, we've talked about, I think the best thing said about rescinding the funds, what Senator Murkowski said, this was the threat to public safety and emergency alerts. 7.3, you mentioned it, Mr. McGovern, 7.3 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Alaska. She noted that it was public broadcasting stations that relayed tsunami warnings that enabled local residents and summer tourists to evacuate to safe locations. So if you look at public broadcasting, they've cut everything. We haven't got a clue of what they are going to do on the development assistance side.
So I guess the answer to my question is that we don't have the specifics.
No.
And that really is troublesome to me, just as a member of the House of Representatives, a member of Congress, is because, I mean, that's what we do. And Mr. Diaz-Balart, I don't agree with you on everything, but there's lots of stuff we do have common ground on. And, we fight to get funding in to bills to make sure that some of these priorities are adequately resourced. But I think that's the way it's supposed to. I think Congress should have a role in all of this. And it seems like we're just kind of handing over all these decisions to the administration. And my last question, do you know anything about this special sweetheart deal that South Dakota got? I'm calling it the Prairie Payoff. Do you know what Senator Rounds got to vote for? These little deals that are being made that I think we're going to find out, in a week or 2 or 3 weeks, and we're all going to be kind of shocked that these deals were made. Look, Senator Tom Tillis said, and I quote, "I suspect we're going to find out that there are some things that we're going to regret," end quote. Roger Wicker, again, another Republican, quote, "In this situation, there's a specific amount stated that will be rescinded, but this Congress will not be allowed to choose those specific cuts. That will be done by somebody in the Office of Management and Budget in the White House. And in this situation, it will amount to the House and Senate basically saying, we concede that decision voluntarily to the executive branch," end quote. I don't think, whether it's a Democrat in the White House or Republican, that we should blindly trust any administration on these matters. I mean, we have a role here in the House, and I think we're forfeiting that role. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't think any of us know what the hell is going to happen. Ms. Delora, you want to add one thing?
Well, I just want to say, I think you've made a very strong point. I just go back to the, to the congressional power and the power of the purse. That has been abdicated here in both the House and in the Senate. And that is to Mr. Votes. That's what he wants to do. As I said, he is looking to this new, what he calls a new paradigm. And that what we've had for really the history here, the kind of, it is a bipartisan appropriations process. And I will fight for a bipartisan appropriations process. But he wants to make that irrelevant. So he wants to rule by continuing resolution, reconciliation, recisions, and that's how he sees this all happening. And I will tell you to anyone, and I don't know what commitments he made to you, my colleague, Mr. Diaz-Balart, or what he made to Mr. Rounds, but flat out, you can't really trust him. He said he lied about PEPFAR rescissions previously in legislation. He made this promise to South Dakota. Who knows? He makes promises that he can't keep. I only know what he wants is that he wants to eviscerate the appropriations process, and he wants to concentrate that power of spending when he wants, what he wants, in the power of OMB. I will just say that if Shalonda Young had done this, my God, what an outcry there would be about what was happening here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Mr. Norman, you're recognized.
Well, thank both of you for taking time to come out. Let me just say, the American people are excited about these cuts, the rescissions. Ms. McGovern, it's up to you to propose your cuts. I never saw anything during the Biden administration that you proposed at any level other than more government, more and more government. And the American people are sick.
Defense cuts.
$9 billion.
A lot of them.
That I wish were far greater. Hopefully in the next rescission package, we will double that amount. And what Elon Musk has done is to reveal to the taxpayers where their money's going. I can name a list of them, starting with the $135 million to the World Health Organization, gone. $158 million to the Lebanese peacekeeping mission, gone. $3 million for the Iraqi Sesame Street, gone. $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, gone. This is just a list. You can parse any one of them and object to them, but I've never seen, you'll spend other people's money, but you won't give the money back to the taxpayers and the economy. Mr. McGovern, it's so rude for you to interrupt. This is my time.
Yeah, it's rude
I don't
to
interrupt you, and it's not your time. You and Jerry Nadler, you've never seen anybody that you don't want to interrupt. It's not only can you not understand when two people are talking, I've never interrupted you one time, and you need to get some manners to you. But all I'll say is that what we're doing, what this president is doing, is making this country over again. The economy is showing it. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Norman. I just an observation. Look, and if it sounds like my colleague appropriator, Democrat appropriator, and I have disagreements, we do, but yet we have a great relationship, we do. And so we do have serious disagreements. I, however, have zero doubt of her fierce trying to protect, right, the power of the purse. And that there we agree. And so, but Mr. Norman, I may be wrong, but this rescission, yes, is to spend a little bit less money, which I think is a good thing. And by the way, this is a process that's in law. So when one may complain about, the process, but this is a process that's established in law. I don't know, and I may be wrong, I don't remember the outrage when, for example, a Democratic president decided to spend money that was neither authorized nor appropriated. And then, by the way, when the Supreme Court of the United States said that's unconstitutional, he kept doing it anyways. Now, again, I want to be respectful. I may be wrong, because you all are here all the time and you all discuss these things. So from what I'm hearing, it must be that all of you agreed during that moment that when a president spent more money that was neither authorized or appropriated by Congress, and then the Supreme Court said, hey, that's unconstitutional, and he did it anyways, I'm sure that was bipartisan outrage. Of course it must have been, right? But we know it wasn't. Here, what we're dealing with is $9 billion through a legislative, legal process. You mentioned some of the issues that are cut. And I just think that this is a responsible, reasonable proposal, which is why I'm respectfully supporting it. And thank you for yielding me some of your time, sir.
Well, I'd say, too, that it's a teardrop in the ocean compared to what we owe, and where my Democrat friends are just willing to bankrupt this country and spend us into oblivion. We're not, and we're making strides, and we're going to continue to make strides. And what I was going to say earlier, Mr. McGovern keeps mentioning Epstein. During the 4 years of the Biden administration, what did we hear from them? They had information then, crickets, nothing. What did they hear on the information they buried on January 6th? Crickets, nothing. So this is a day of transparency, and it's a day that we're going to identify a lot of problems. Overspending is one of them. I look forward to many more rescission cuts, including the pocket rescissions.
Mr. Norman?
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And we do, I think everyone on this side of the aisle wants to thank Mr. Norman for his vote earlier this week in favor of releasing the Epstein files, because we think this is something that clearly already has some bipartisan support, and we think it should move forward on that basis. But we're here primarily about the rescissions package, which, with this package, I think the White House and congressional Republicans have sunk to a new low. We're here in yet another emergency rules committee hearing because the right-wing zealots and Project 2025 authors who are calling the shots in this Trump White House find democracy and the rule of law to be inconvenient barriers to their extremist agenda. So instead, they want to rule this country through a combination of fear and make-believe emergencies. This time, they're trying to cut federal funding for some uniquely impactful programs with broad bipartisan public support, including public radio and television, and global healthcare and hunger relief programs that are widely acknowledged as being critical services for local and especially rural American communities, and that are important to both our national security and our moral standing in the world. Particularly with respect to the USAID programs, I hear frequently from constituents who are parts of faith groups, including our Catholic charities and colleges, our mainline congregations, our Quaker friends, as well as our local Rotary clubs and other nonprofit groups, that they value these programs and believe that they should receive more support, not less. So why are they under attack? Because the Republican Party under Trump claims that these important programs, which benefit the general public and our national security, must be cut in order to reduce the national debt. The hypocrisy is astonishing. Not even 2 weeks ago, Republicans voted on a strict party line basis to put the country $4 to $6 trillion deeper in debt, not so they could lower costs for Americans, not so they could improve Americans' health and well-being or address the existential threat of climate change, but to give the mega-rich a bigger tax cut at the expense of all other Americans. In fact, they rammed through their grotesque, big, ugly bill, knowing that it will slash health care for millions of Americans, including nursing home residents, children with disabilities, and hardworking low-income Americans just trying to get ahead. It will end SNAP food assistance for hungry Americans, and it will repeal long overdue environmental protection measures that had already started to reduce energy costs and protect vulnerable communities. And now Republicans want to zero out funding for NPR and PBS and programs that undergird American influence abroad, ostensibly in the name of deficit reduction. This recession package is a cruel joke. The pattern is clear. The Trump administration, aided and abetted by congressional Republicans, is getting services for working Americans, shielding the powerful, and calling it fiscal responsibility. We hear lies about deficit reduction and cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, only to see Trump and the Republicans add trillions to the debt. We hear lies about making the government more efficient, and then see Republicans slash funding for some of the government's most efficient programs while firing and defunding effective government watchdogs. We hear lies about the actions of prior administrations only to distract from this administration's abuses and cover-ups. Meanwhile, Republicans are ignoring real areas of waste, fraud, and abuse, whether in the financial and tech sectors, at the Pentagon, or with Big Pharma, with the private prison contractors that they're paying to lock up law-abiding members of our communities, because going after that fraud, that waste, that abuse would hurt their campaign donors. And then there's the waste and abuse being committed by this administration on a daily basis. Just this week, we learned that the Trump administration is going to destroy 1 million pounds of international food aid. This is food that was produced and purchased from American farmers with taxpayer dollars, but that has been allowed to rot in warehouses because this administration blocked its distribution and then ignored warnings that it would go to waste. Let this sink in. American taxpayers are going to pay for the purchase and destruction of 1 million pounds of food that was supposed to feed 1.5 million malnourished children. This isn't just un-American, it's immoral. It violates every humanitarian norm. So what we get under Trump's Republican Party is a mountain of debt, millions losing their health care, millions going hungry, and with this bill, millions around the globe losing their lives, while here at home, millions will lose their local radio and public television. The fits and starts with which both this rescission bill and the big ugly bill have moved also point to another important anti-democratic trend. These bills have been stalled repeatedly, not with bipartisan negotiations, but by a Republican legislative agenda that screws over the American people. But when those schemes screw over the wrong Republicans, that Republican senator or member of Congress goes and begs the White House for a sweetheart deal to exempt their state or their district from whatever havoc the bill is creating nationwide. This naked influence peddling and partisanship is an astonishing breach of the principle that Congress and the White House should serve all Americans, not just their partisan allies or donors. If your Republican cuts are good for my constituents, then they should be good enough for your constituents too. Now, with the White House, the House, and the Senate under Republican control, the apparent operating theory of government is now to use the power of the federal government to benefit themselves, their friends, and families at the expense of everyone else, at the expense of the nation, and at the expense of our collective future. As we stand on the brink of our nation's 250th anniversary, it is sickening to see the damage to our American constitutional order, which was formed and has always been grounded in fairness and the rule of law. It is a disgrace. And this is a disgrace that our founders sought to prevent. They designed a constitutional system to prevent demagogues from sowing confusion, manipulating public passions, and abusing the rule of law. The separation of powers among the three branches of government is supposed to hold each branch in check. But that requires that Congress, and specifically the majority of Congress, live up to its constitutional duty instead of cowering in fear or acting the fool. And until the House and Senate majorities grow a spine, we are all of us in peril. So, Ranking Member DeLauro, the last time a rescission measure passed the House, I believe, was over 30 years ago. So it is not something that is part of our normal order of business. Can you comment at all on this rescission package and the specificity or lack thereof, and how it might compare to prior rescission
Yeah,
packages.
well, the point in fact is I say that the OMB director, Russ Vought, has designed a system to remove the Congress and the Appropriations Committee in this aspect, to eviscerate it, so that the power to make a decision of what amount of money will be spent, where it will be spent, how it will be spent, no matter what the Congress has directed. These are congressional directed dollars. And he has the view that he has the authority to do that. He can't do that. There's no inherent authority to do it. The rescission piece of it, yes, is a lawful process under the Impoundment Control Act, and they don't even believe, he doesn't believe in the Impoundment Control Act. But this was a way for him to codify the cuts that he would like to make, because it just doesn't like it. How we can, and that's, you know, not been the case in point. Look, I would be opposed to this under any administration. I fought with the Biden administration when we, and I'll be very self-serving. I moved forward to say that OMB had to let us know what money it was spending and what they were apportioning for various funds, and they had to make that public. They did not want to do that. I had this conversation, but we did it because the public has a right to know where their dollars are going. And under this process, and when we look at this rescission package, particularly on the international development assistance, we have no idea what they're doing or where they are going with this. So it is really unprecedented, but unprecedented based on a construct of Russ Vought, the OMP director, that remove appropriations, amass the power, and it's not even power for the president, I might add. He is amassing that power for himself. And that somebody who is unelected, we're going to turn over, that this body, House, Senate, turn over that power to this individual. I find that unconscionable. If I may make a couple of points, and I wanted to say that with my colleague, we agree and we disagree, as he's pointed out. But Chairman Diaz-Balart understands the value of some of these programs. He knows the value of supporting voices for democracy over authoritarianism, and that we need to keep funding long-term development and education, agriculture to support our partners, build stability over time. As he has mentioned, he funds these programs. So these programs are being gutted with this rescission, and we have to consider that. I make my final point, and I want to, if I can, to Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, today, this president is spending billions of dollars that is lawfully unavailable to him. Congress has not approved it. The OMB director vote has really tricked the president into spending it anyway, against the law. I would be happy to sit with you to go through this with you, and I would hope we could join together to hold him, or quite frankly, any president accountable. And I'm happy to follow up with you. That's not the issue that we are focused on here today, but it has to do with how the appropriations process works, what the agreements were in the past, what money was allocated, how it was supposed to be used. And that's the law. So I just leave it there. I hope I've answered the general.
No, I think you did. And I just wanted to clarify one more thing. So The bill before us today, this rescission package, was prepared by Russell Vogt, who's the head
Yes.
of the Office of Management and Budget.
Right, that's right.
He also is the primary author of Project 2025,
That's
is he
right.
not? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he is.
And so this package would legitimize the cuts that the Office of Management and Budget and this author of Project 2025 have made without Congress's
Well,
input.
he in Project 2025, I read it carefully, you
Same.
know, he talks about empowerment. When he went for his confirmation hearings, you know, ruled in, you know, that it was impounded, because he said empowerment is, that is the inherent authority of the executive. And again, I've quoted here before, not the case. Judge Antonin Scalia opined on this, Judge Kavanaugh has opined on this, that there is no inherent authority. But I also want to be clear that the rescission piece of that, the 45-day piece, is something that does come out of the Empowerment, you know, Control Act. It is just upending both the constitutional power of the purse that the Congress has, and to eviscerate and hopefully eliminate, and for the life of me, an appropriations process. I'm going to fight to the death for the power of the Appropriations Committee, because I believe in it. I believe in what it has done and the difference it has made in a bipartisan way. I crafted deals with Tom Cole that increased the amount of money for the NIH, that funded Gear Up and TRIO and education programs that made a difference, that we looked at these areas, and we've, and also with Congressman Diaz-Balart, with what we've done. And what they did here was to carve out Egypt. They carve out certain pieces. They want to spend it in Egypt and Jordan and spend it in any way they want. But we need an obligation to Jordan to do that. They're the stabilizing force in the Middle East. But you can't pick and choose depending on who you like and who you don't like and who you support politically and don't support politically. That is not the process. We have an established process here, which is called the appropriations process, which deals with that money. And while the president can want to make changes, he needs to come back to the Congress to make those changes. That is the piece that is missing here, totally.
Well, obviously, we appreciate the work that you and Chairman Cole do with appropriations. He, of course, is a longtime member of this committee. And we appreciate the appropriations process, but I would say even behind that, we have the constitutional process pursuant to Article 1, where it's Congress that makes the laws and funds the government and not the executive. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Roy, you're recognized.
Thank the chairwoman. Just a couple of quick things. And I would ask the chairman, just real quick, if I'm correct, there are significant previous presidents have submitted rescissions in the past, including Democrat presidents such as President Clinton. True?
Yes, sir, because it is under the law. It's allowed, this is part of the legal process.
Part of the law. It's a normal part of the process.
Correct, sir.
Following the law. And so, you know, we can debate which things we choose to cut or not, but the fact is it's a normal part of the process.
Correct.
Secondly, we're talking about $9 billion, correct?
That's correct, sir,
Total outlays for the federal government this year, $7 trillion.
approximately.
So we're talking about 0.00012 or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, 0.133%. Okay, but like 0.13% or something. Yeah. So we're talking about a tiny fraction, right, of our overall spend, right?
I would agree.
So, but in the process of doing that, what we're trying to do is clean up a significant amount of the spending. Is that right?
Mr. Roy, if I may,
Yeah.
I think it doesn't pass the smell test to say that every penny that the federal government spends is well spent, obviously. But I would argue, and I think it's pretty easy to be proven right, that in particular in the last 4 years, the amount of waste and misspending was so outrageous that there needed to be a pullback. And this is an attempt to do just that.
And so, and with people have gone through various lists, and people have different priorities in life, but I can just tell you the people who sent me to Texas. Sent me from Texas to Washington. They didn't want us to do $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. They didn't want us to do $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. They didn't want me to do $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. And then, look, I understand people have their priorities. They think some idea is a good idea. They go, okay, we got to help the Egyptians. Let's go help them with some tourism. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of good reasons to go to Egypt without that, but okay. But $6 million, well, that's $6 million. We're $37 trillion in debt. $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma. I can go down a complete list of just some crazy things. $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. We can go down the list. These lists are public. My point being, there's a lot of stuff in here that we're trying to clean up what we're spending. Again, $9 billion out of the $7 trillion in outlays. Now, there's probably more coming. And I know that there are some concerns for that. But is Director Vogt, is he operating in any way outside of the law by doing this?
I'm glad you asked that, because at the introduction of this meeting on this issue, the Honorable Chairwoman talked about that this is established in law. This process is established in law. And I obviously have great respect for everybody here, but I will tell you, Mr. Roy, I was a little taken back because I think it is absolutely healthy to disagree, right? I was taken a little bit aback when you, the OMB director, try to disqualify a person who, by the way, was Senate confirmed. Now, I may have disagreements, you may have disagreements, but I have to admit I was taken back when you try to disqualify an individual because you disagree with that individual. And I frankly have to admit, I take exception with that attitude. As well as I mentioned a little while ago, sir, this is a legal process, number one. Number two is there is a egregious violation of a president spending money neither authorized nor appropriated, and it's not me saying it, Mr. Roy. The Supreme Court of the United States said that. Where was the outrage by some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Roy? And so again, to your point, yes, thank you. This is a legal process. It's fine to agree or disagree with some of the cuts, obviously. It's a legal process. Can we absorb it? Absolutely. And by the way, again, the appropriations process, which is a big part of this, has already begun.
Two more quick questions. You obviously focus a lot of your attention as an appropriator in areas such as the United Nations, World Health Organization, et cetera. My understanding is that HR 4 rescinds $33 million, but that's up $1.5 billion appropriated in fiscal year 2024 in the United Nations. And then it's going after things, for example, like UNRWA and programs that have been severely discredited in terms of their support for our enemies and the enemies of Israel and enemies of our allies. Do you believe that this is the sweet spot in trying to clean up some of the mess and how the dollars have been flowing overseas while still maintain some of our engagements with these entities?
Well, again, the Secretary of State has clearly said we're going to continue to do things that are important abroad for the national security interests of the United States. We're just going to do it in a way that supports our national security interest. And not, you mentioned some of the wasteful programs. There's so many others, and we can go on for days talking about that. So you also asked the question specifically about, for example, the UN. Both in fiscal year 24 and this in the appropriations bill in fiscal year 25. And I think you might be glad to hear that in the fiscal year 26 bill that was passed out of subcommittee this week, we defund the general fund of the UN. We defund UNRWA. We defund the World Health Organization. But I think it's important to put some things on the record. Look, I just mentioned, for example, the bill fiscal year 24 and 25, the appropriations bill. I have here, and again, I respect it, but I have here in writing the press release put together by the Democratic leaders of the Appropriations Committee, and I respect their opinion. I disagree with it. And let me tell you some of the things, I've highlighted some of the things here that we, the appropriators, in the case it was my bill, right, that they complained that we were eliminating funds for. And let me just read it out loud. They were upset that we had a prohibiting funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the EcoHealth Alliance, gain of function research, and any lab controlled by China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, they say Russia twice, and Venezuela. So we have a difference in opinion. We think that funds for things like this are not only wasteful, they hurt our national security interests. If I may, I don't want to go through this ad nauseum, but for example, another thing that we were criticized for is a prohibition of funds for the government of the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Communist Party, and that we prevent lending through the international financial institutions to the People's Republic of China. If I may, also not upset, they were, pointing out that they opposed cutting funds because we said no funds can be used to revoke the designation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, Mr. Roy, I respect that our friends on the other side of the aisle don't want to cut any spending. I respect that they believe, I guess, that everything is well spent, but I would argue that history would show us that when they are supporting funding things that I just read for you, this is in writing, and I respect their opinion on it, and I would also argue that thinking that $9 billion rescission is going to somehow end the world, to your point, because every penny is so well spent that we shouldn't touch any of it, I would respectfully say I strongly disagree. This is a step in the right direction, and I think, hopefully, pretty soon, I hope to be able to come in front of you with the fiscal year 26 appropriations bill dealing with these issues, and hopefully, again, hopefully in that moment we can count for your support. I'm not asking for it now because you haven't seen it, but I think you might be pleased with some of those issues that we have in that bill.
Well, I thank my friend from Florida, and since the gentleman from Florida has used more than my time, I will only close by saying this because it's been so important to the people in my community, because a lot of folks here are talking about and extolling the virtues of NPR, PBS, public broadcasting, and so forth, and talked about how they're cutting their funding is somehow going to endanger communities and rural communities. Well, when the floods were hitting the people that I represent, it took NPR through Texas Public Radio 19 hours to post anything about the flooding on its social media. What was NPR and TPR doing in the interim? What were they doing in the morning at 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning when private radio stations that I listened to and that I talked to were breaking in and presenting the information of the news? They were playing a program, a DC-based program, lobbying Congress for billions of dollars to continue their funding. When the flood hit at 4 in the morning, instead of providing local news, they were airing the morning edition of the Washington, D.C. Well, that's fine. They already had it pre-taped. I get that. But they didn't break in like the local stations did and so forth. The 7 private stations posted over 70 alerts on their social pages throughout the day, starting at 7:24 in the morning. My point being, private stations in the communities in which I live were there for the people of Texas. They were there presenting the information necessary. And the public stations were completely MIA. And with that, I yield back to the chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Would you like, Mr. Chairman, to enter any of that material that you read into the record?
That would be great, and I would ask that.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Well, I think the chairwoman, I do just want to say to the gentleman from Texas, who I have great respect for, and I certainly am keeping his constituents and his communities in my prayers. I will say his experience with respect to public radio and public television, vastly different than mine. I represent the state of Colorado. My district has been besieged by multiple natural disasters, flash floods, wildfires, and on every occasion, public television, public broadcasting, public radio stations, Colorado Public Television, Rocky Mountain PBS have been there. And I would take umbrage to the suggestion. I'm not going to speak for other members and their respective experiences in their districts or their states, but I will certainly say for the state of Colorado, public television has played an instrumental role in helping constituents during difficult times of need. I want to say thank you to the ranking member and to the subcommittee chairman. Welcome back. Good to have you both here. Mr. Diaz-Balart, Chairman, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So first, how much is the total dollar figure for the rescissions package?
I believe it's $9 billion. I can get you.
$9 billion? Okay.
Yes.
And I think you described that, I wrote this down, as a substantial chunk of change.
It's a